right. What is up? C Farsight, who was already in the chat before I even went live. Actually, can you? I guess you can do that. Tell me if my sound is okay, man. Should be okay. It's capturing okay. It's a bit low. Okay. Move that closer. A little bit closer. That should be okay. It's the same as always. Trying to gain up a little bit. All right. So, welcome everybody to CanHammer, your source for 40K from the Great White North. It is the 6th week of isolation. And shout out to everybody who's tuning in. C Farsight, of course. Ultimaza, Sean Stryker, Snoot DeVille. Welcome, guys. We are doing okay. We had to move from Tuesday to tonight because of work matters, but all's good. And excited to bring some content tonight. Super itching to play. And so looking forward to our book. But so on the good news, GW is reopening the web store in certain countries. And however, the factories and stuff are not reopening yet. So slowly coming back online. And so should hopefully be the start of release schedule again. Probably to have to wait till they can start producing stuff again, but I think it should be soon, hopefully in the next few weeks. By the end of May, we should be hopefully they might be back in business, which means the AdMech Night book will be probably June, which means our book won't be till summertime, July at the earliest, I would think. Oh, so far away still. But it's May 1st tomorrow, so I guess it's not that far. The month of April has flown by, a blur of working from home, working in a hospital, an energetic kid at home, all sorts of craziness. But you know what? That's already been 6 weeks, almost 7 weeks of isolation, and here we are. So at this point, it's like you might as well keep going till we're sure that it's going to be okay, because to go back too early and to have to do it all again because of a second wave, that would be too hard to bear. So while we're all in it and used to it now, we might as well just keep going until we're definitely sure we're ready to come out. That's my general feeling anyway. But yeah. Rise and Shine ready. Catch-up releases. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they would do that. They obviously had already made plans to delay everything. So I don't know if they would rush things out. Especially if their production capacity is not up to par. That'll only make people pissed off. So I think they will probably just have pushed it back and will just retain the same schedule. I don't see them rushing things out. So, yeah, I guess we'll see. We'll see. And is the book going to be Custodes? Yeah, so it's Custodes, Sisters, Assassins, and I think Death Guard. So that's like the our book, which is called War of the Spider. And then, and there's Fabius Bile and Death Guard. And then the last book is the Pariah book with Necrons and those guys. Scott Adams, welcome. So, tonight, as requested and voted for a couple of weeks ago, is the episode 16. Hard to believe we've done 16. I think it's more like 18 because a couple of them were like special interview episodes. But episode 16 of the Tactica series. I only just realized last week that most likely I'm going to have to redo almost all of the Tactica again after our book comes out, but that's fine. That keeps things going, because starting to run out of topics. So if you have ideas for topics or things you want to talk about, and it can be very small topics, very specific topics or situations, or can be very broad topics, let me know. We still have Soup coming up. We have Bikes Revisited episode coming out, and we got ITC secondaries coming out. So we still got a few topics to go after tonight. But if you have something specific you want me to talk about, then let me know. Message me. Join the Custodes Discord, which is right there. I've updated the link as of tonight. And let us know. Come join the community and chat and huddle by the fire until our book comes out. So do join up. Okay, so other than COVID stuff, not much has been going on, obviously. No releases. They've just given people access to old lore. They released that cool Catachan model, like the black dude with the goggles and stuff. That's a cool model. I'm going to see if I can get one. See if Dan can hook me up. And then otherwise, nothing much coming out. Been playing a lot of games. Gloomhaven. Been playing board games. I got this cool game that's very easy to play remotely on Zoom. It's called Welcome To. It's basically a roll and write game, except there's no rolling. It's card based. You have to build a little new 1950s American community. It's a pretty cool game. So I've been playing that. And then of course continued work on my Eldar Bikers. Taking it slow and steady. So this week, what did we do this week? We finished all of our spraying. Put a little bit of a purple ink. Purple oil wash, and then have just finished putting on some white second stage highlights using the oil and blend technique that Marco uses, and it looks really good. So do check out our Instagram and on the Discord for those pictures. So they're coming along. I think the next thing I got to do is put a little bit of light and color back into the back part of the model, which is all shadow right now, just to give it a little bit of definition, and put some on the far arm, which is in the shadow, and then I got to start painting the details, and then I'll be done those guys. So it's coming along well. Those bikes are maybe going to be the nicest models I've ever painted. Taken me a long time, but very cool, using new techniques and new materials. So shout out to Marco Frazzoni on YouTube for opening my eyes to all these things. Had a great conversation with some people today about healthcare systems and stuff like that. It had nothing to do with 40K, but interesting conversation anyway, and so that was really cool. So yeah, everything status quo. And of course, been playing Final Fantasy VII, which gets better every time I play it. So good. The fighting system is actually way more in depth than people realize. It's got so much to it, this game. It's just so good, so good. And the thing I like about it the most, and that's not a new thing, but certainly new compared to the old model of RPG when Final Fantasy VII was first released. It was like, here's an area, you have to explore it, then you fight a boss. Area, explore, fight a boss. Area, explore, fight a boss. Well, this game, you never know when you're going to get a boss. I mean, you kind of know sometimes because it's kind of like the old game, but sometimes there's just a boss in there you didn't even know. So, and I'm like, no, I wasn't ready. And like, while I could always just find out about it, reset it, and then do it again and make it a lot easier, I have managed to get through some of these bosses by the skin of my teeth after epic battles, and that always feels a lot better than just breezing through. The boss I fought last night was like Phoenix down after Phoenix down, trying to keep my guys alive, just trying for a split second to keep my guys alive. It's pretty fun. So great game, and so I've been playing that a lot. In fact, I'll be playing that after I finish this. So, okay. So we might as well get into it. Tonight we're going to talk about Tanglefoot. So, for those of you who don't know what Tanglefoot is, and if you don't, then maybe you should read our book. Tanglefoot is a stratagem from the Codex, which reads like this. For 1 CP, you can use this stratagem at the beginning of your opponent's movement or charge phase. Choose an enemy unit, and just to be clear, you can use it in the beginning of the movement phase and then at the beginning of the charge phase, okay? Choose an enemy unit within 12 inches of any of our infantry units, so that's key, so bikers don't count, and roll a d6. You subtract that amount from the movement characteristic of that unit or from the charge distance, or the charge distance of that unit. Doesn't work on fly. Okay, so let's dissect this Very important paragraph. I would argue, and many would agree with me, that Tanglefoot Grenade is possibly one of the best stratagems in the game. Right up there with things like Vect and, Generations in the Making, stuff like that. The Tremor Shell stratagem. And the reason is just behind those is because you can use Vect and Generations in the Making to stop a Tanglefoot. But and movement is a very important part of the game. It's probably the most important part. Is a part where you are completely in control, and that's why things that stop you from doing that, Tanglefoot, Tremor Shells, things like that, are so powerful. And it's a real feel-bad moment when you affect someone's movement. Because usually it's a sacrosanct part of the game where you get to make your plans and do your thing and your opponent can do nothing about it. So the fact that you can disrupt someone's movement not only is functionally good in the game, but kind of gets in their head a little bit, especially if you do it multiple times. You're like, Tanglefoot. Oh, Tanglefoot your charge. Oh, Tanglefoot your fallback. Like, it gets a bit annoying. And I've seen people get a little bit enraged by repeated uses of Tanglefoot. So there is a psychological advantage to messing with people's movement as well. So let's break this down a little bit. So first of all, you have to use it at the beginning of the movement or the charge phase. Okay? You cannot wait until that person is about to move or charge before doing it. Now, a lot of the time, when you first start playing Custodes especially, and you're not used to using Tanglefoot a lot, you just forget to use it in the movement phase at all. You forget that that's even a thing, and you're just concentrating on messing up charges. And then when it is the charge phase, you just use it when the person declares the charge. You didn't use it at the beginning of the phase. So if you're playing a serious game in a tournament or whatever, people can call you on that, and they're correct. Okay? So that is one limitation, is you have to pick at the beginning of the phase who you want to Tanglefoot, okay? And so it does give the opponent an opportunity to change their mind about charging or move in a different way, change their plan, because you told them at the beginning of their phase that this was going to happen, okay? And they know the result and all that. So that's one thing. So you do have to remember to use it at the beginning of the phase, okay? And most people will be fine, that's fine. It's the same result regardless. Maybe movement phase shenanigans is a little bit tough that you didn't tell the person, so they maybe started moving other stuff that they may have moved differently because you didn't tell them you're using Tanglefoot. So I could argue for sure that people should say, no, man, you can't do it now because I already did the rest of my movement. But in the charge phase, things are going to charge generally. Like it's the same thing anyway. But just remember that. Okay, I'll skip to the last line. Units with the fly keyword are not affected. So everything else can be Tanglefooted, okay? You can Tanglefoot anything. Josh Tatton, because it can be done in two different phases, it can be used on two completely different units, yes. And remember, it's just the effect only lasts to the end of the phase. So, okay, so you can use it on any unit except if it doesn't have the keyword fly. You can use it on normal infantry. Okay, you can use it on a tank. You can use it on a knight. You can use it on a titan. Okay, you can use it on a mastodon. You can use it on anything that does not fly. Okay, it was so cool that you can throw this little grenade that stops this warlord titan from moving d6 inches. So you can use it on anything. There's no restrictions on Titanic or anything like that, okay? In fact, some of the best units to use it on are the big ones because it adds to the aggro of your opponent because it's so ridiculous. You can Tanglefoot a tank. It's so good. So you can use it on anything that's not fly. Keep that in mind, okay? And this is one of these stratagems that you always have to have near the top level of your consciousness when you're playing, okay? So, for example, like generally you have a bunch of things sitting on the top of your consciousness while you're playing. So you're like, okay, what's my target priority? What's my opponent want to do? What do I want to accomplish this turn? How am I going to get recon? So you have these things kind of sitting on the top of your consciousness. On the second level, maybe what's the score? What do I need to score to tie this game? How many turns are there left? That sort of thing. And then lower down in your consciousness is like, what do I have for lunch? I need to go shit. Like these kind of things. And generally, your levels of consciousness drop a little bit when it's not your turn, okay? Because generally, all you're doing is like making saves. But you got to maintain that level of consciousness, and Tanglefoot in your opponent's turn needs to be at the top of that levels of consciousness, okay? You need to be constantly thinking in your opponent's movement phase and charge phase. How can I Tanglefoot? How can I Tanglefoot? How can I Tanglefoot? Okay? And other than using like Homer and those kind of stratagems, like you got 1 CPs for Tanglefoot should be near the top of your conscious mind as you're playing in your opponent's phase. So you just keep it up there, because otherwise you will forget to use it, and then you'll think, that would have been so good if I Tanglefooted. And that feeling is not good. So keep it in mind. Okay, the next thing to note is that it changes reduces the unit's movement characteristic. Okay, so this is for the movement phase. Reduces their movement characteristic. So most of the time that's fine. It's pretty self-explanatory. Just remove this D6 roll from your move. But sometimes there's extra goodness to that. For example, things that move twice. Okay? Advance, move, advance. Here's a stratagem, or here's a spell, warp time. Overrun's not a good example because that's not the... is it moving phase? I can't remember. But there's lots of stratagems and spells out there that let people move twice or move again. Move, although that's in the shooting phase, but that's something that probably needs FAQ. But it changes their movement characteristics so it would affect both moves. Okay, so if you Tanglefoot somebody and then they warp time, I believe warp time says they just make another move, so their warp time move would be reduced as well, and by the same amount. Although warp time is psychic phase. But then it says move as is in a movement phase, and in the movement phase, your characteristic was reduced. Anyway, as I said, it kind of needs FAQ. But there's lots of things that move twice in the movement phase, and so you need to remember that it affects both things, okay? So remember, it changes the move characteristic. Now in the charge phase, it just reduces their charge by that number of inches. It's fairly straightforward. So keep that in mind. And it doesn't affect anything. It doesn't affect like heroics, that sort of stuff, because it just says actually reduces the charge distance by that result. So generally, you should be using it whenever you can. As I say, you got to keep it on the top of your consciousness so you can throw it out there at a moment's notice and be aware of what your opponent's trying to do. And so obviously in the charge phase is fairly easy. There's only 2 or 3 things charging. What do I want to screw up? Use it on whichever one you want to screw up or disincentivize, okay? And that can affect how you decide to move in your own turn before that. Because you might want to try and bait somebody into making that 8-inch charge, 7-inch charge, right? Oh, it's only 7 inches. I'm gonna position my troops so I can 7-inch charge your guardians, okay? You're like, okay, come 7-inch charge. You move meticulously, pre-measure. Okay, I'm now 7 inches. That'll be a 7-inch charge. And then they come to the charge phases. I'm like, Tanglefoot. Oh, I rolled a 5. Guess what? You can't charge me now. So you have to remember, if you're going to Tanglefoot something like that, it can come into your thinking the turn before, okay? Because you can really catch people out like that. And you don't have to tell people, it's fair. Like, oh, next turn, by the way, I'm going to tempt you to make this 7-inch charge so I can Tanglefoot you. Like, nobody would expect you to do that. So it's like, okay, I'm moving now. I'm going to be a 7-inch charge from these guys. Is that fine? Yes, it is. Okay, now it's 7-inch charge. Oh, actually, now it's a 12-inch charge. So even like a roll of a 2 on a 7-inch charge makes it a 9-inch charge, which then becomes much more failable. So that's definitely a thing. And of course, remember, you can CP reroll your Tanglefoot. Okay, so in the charge phase, though, it's usually fairly straightforward. You're like, okay, who do I want to kind of mess up on the charge? In the movement phase, it's a little bit, you have to think about what your opponent is trying to do in this turn. You have to just wait one moment before you start to move anything. Just give me a minute to look at the board state at the end of your turn. And then it's like, okay, where do these units want to go? What is he going to do with these units? And am I in a position to make him change his plans, or make his plans not work by using a Tanglefoot? Or is it not really going to matter? and then don't use it if it's not going to matter. But if you have the opportunity to really mess up somebody with a Tanglefoot, then you should. Or by messing up one unit, you make another unit not do what they were supposed to do, but have to do what that other unit was supposed to do. So spending 2 units basically to do one thing. So these are things to keep in mind, and you just get your opponent to pause at the beginning of their movement phase so you can make that decision. So the other thing not to do, don't Tanglefoot something that's gonna like the jump or like do a on the wings of fury thing or leave the table like Gene Stealer Cult or whatever. That's a waste. Those people can't, if they do come back in that turn, they're either not Tanglefooted anymore or they can't move anymore because they're just stuck out of 9 inches or somewhere. So that's kind of a waste. So don't Tanglefoot a unit that's just gonna move or get the jumped or whatever. That's kind of pointless. I think those are kind of the general pointers that I wanted to talk about Tanglefoot. Is, it's a great stratagem, but it's not great unless you use it. So always save CP for it, especially at the end of the game. A key Tanglefoot, it's like so clutch. Like you save 1 CP into turn 4, 5, 6, just the Tanglefoot. Key movements and key charges, it can literally win you the game, save you that 1 point, or get you that 1 point that wins the game. It can be so clutch. So think about saving a CP for it, and always have it in the top of your mind to use. Movement phase and charge phase. And remember, you have to use it at the beginning of the turn. And we're going to go into some of these situations specifically now, but if you think about these situations, especially near the mid to end of the game, they can be game winning for you. Okay, so movement phase. So one use for Tanglefoot, obviously, this unit wants to move onto that objective, Tanglefoot. Or this unit is going to move onto the objective you're on in order to contest it, Tanglefoot. That unit needs to move there for the bonus, or to get recon, or to get King of the Hill, Tanglefoot. These are all good uses of Tanglefoot, because now that person either doesn't get that, okay, or they have to roll a big advance, and then they might spend a CP to re-roll that big advance because it's so key for them. They might have to send another unit now to go do what that original unit was going to do, and then that other unit can't do what they were going to do, and that ripples all the way down their movement phase. Or that may end up getting you hold more and bonus, whereas they would have tied you and then maybe gotten a bonus or something. So it can be really clutch, 1, 2, even 3 point swings on a good Tanglefoot. So you got to keep your options open and an eye on what the game state is, because stopping units from moving to objectives is very powerful. Especially if they just got chaffed, they just need to move 4 of them onto objective because you only got 3 guys. Now you Tanglefoot them, maybe only 1 guy or 2 guys gets onto the objective, and now you force them to charge you to get onto the objective, or advance, or whatever. So you can really change things when you're Tanglefooting units that are intending to move onto objectives. And then these days, with a lot of armies wanting to do double recon scoring, double King of the Hill, these behind enemy lines, these kind of ITC points, you can stop their scoring with a good Tanglefoot, or stop the double score, and then take those units out, and then all of a sudden now they're struggling with not getting to achieve what they had planned to achieve secondary wise. So it can be literally points in the bag, a good Tanglefoot, by stopping things moving into areas or moving onto objectives. Okay, another use for Tanglefoot is to stop range. So let's say you've got a unit of dudes in a building and you're near this AdMech gun line, and they've got, robots that are about to mow down a whole bunch of, Alaris Terminators downfield. And, the robots are whatever, 24-inch range or 36, I can't remember. But so they need to move, and then they're going to plant, and then they're going to shoot the hell out of you. So you're like, okay, Tanglefoot. I was like, now what do they do? you could actually make their movement characteristic negative with a high rolling Tanglefoot. And then what can they do? They're not going to plant. They can't move and plant. Like, you totally just screwed them up. They got nothing else to shoot. Now they got to wait till next turn to do all that. So you've literally taken that unit out of the game for a whole turn for 1 CP. If you could tell somebody you can pay 1 CP to take this unit, make this unit do nothing for a turn, would you take that stratagem? Yes. Another good use is to stop people shooting, because a lot of people like to stay just out of range so they don't get shot in their turn, and then move into range in their turn so they can get the first shot. So this is something that often people have not planned for in their own turn. They don't think, oh, that unit might Tanglefoot me, so I won't be able to get into range. I can guarantee you nobody thinks about that, because nobody plays against Custodes very often, so they don't know about that. And even if they do, a lot of Custodes players are not using Tanglefoot in the movement phase. So you can guarantee that nobody has planned for that -5 to their movement in their turn, the turn before. Okay, so you can stop whole shooting phases by Tanglefooting shooting units. And as I said, you can do that on tanks. You can do that on anything that doesn't fly. Okay, maybe that knight just stayed out of range. Now it's going to shoot its Gatling. This is 24-inch range. Well, now you could just screw that up too. So very important to think about that as a use for Tanglefoot, stopping shooting. Okay, and obviously, as we already mentioned, so you can, if you stop someone moving into range for shooting, you can also use it to stop people from moving into range for charges. Okay, and so if this unit in their turn they calculated, okay, so this is how far you can move in your turn, then my next turn I'm going to move up here, and then I'll be in 6-inch charge and I'll charge you. Okay, that's a great plan. That's a plan that you made 2 turns ahead. That's pretty impressive. Except now I Tanglefoot you, so now you're 18 inches away and you won't be able to get into a good charge range. Or if you do get into a charge range, now I could Tanglefoot you again. So that whole unit has spent the whole turn doing nothing and is now sitting out in the wind. So it can be very powerful. As I say, it just messes up people's movement plans because they never think about it the turn before. Okay. Okay, and finally, in movement phase is what we like to call the Tanglefoot wrap. So, just in its simplest form, if you roll, if say like a Centurion has a 4-inch move, okay, I'm not sure why you'd want necessarily to Tanglefoot Centurion, but if you have a 4-inch move and you Tanglefoot them and you roll 4, they can't move, they can't fall back because they can't end up their movement phase outside of 1 inch of you, so they cannot fall back. Now, you do have to roll the equivalent of their movement, okay? So if you roll a 3, they still have 1-inch move. They can, by definition, they're not on top of you. They're just, even if they're basing you, they now will be just over 1 inch away from you. So you do need to roll the same as their movement phase. So it's much harder to do, obviously, with 5-inch moving or 6-inch moving models. So it's not always easy to Tanglefoot wrap somebody unless you get really lucky or really desperate. Okay, end of the game, you need to keep somebody from falling back onto an objective. You got 1 CP left. That's going to win you the game. Just Tanglefoot them and hope for the best. So as I say, all these things late game are so much more powerful. However, that's assuming you here and your opponent's here and that's it. Or you got a line of models and he got a line of models. Okay, if your opponent's here and you're a bit wrapped around them, let's say, or let's say you attempted to do a tri-point, but you didn't quite get there, not good enough. Now, for this person, this model to move over 1 inch away from you, he actually has to move more than 1 inch to do that. He has to move 2 inches or 3 inches or longer. So now a Tanglefoot wrap is much more possible. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. And remember, the whole unit has to end up over 1 inch away from you. If any one model in that unit is still within 1 inch of you, they're still in combat with you, and then now you can use your heroic intervention trait in their turn. Haha! So Tanglefoot combos into a heroic intervention. Anyway, so keep in mind, so your models your units rarely ever meet straight on like this, unless you're playing with like movement traits or something. There's often ins and outs of models. They interdigitate. Maybe you tried to wrap something, or you've wrapped around one side of it. or tanks especially. So you got a tank here and you put models on 3 sides of it, but you just didn't have enough to get a wrap. That tank actually has to move at least 3 or 4 inches to get completely out of an inch of view, and so a good Tanglefoot can mess that up, especially if it's been damaged and it doesn't have move characteristic. Most like guard and marine tanks, for example, that you can Tanglefoot move 4 inches or maybe 5 inches at the most on their lowest profile, and so you can save yourself being shot if you Tanglefoot that thing. Even you roll a 3 or 4, it can't get out of an inch of you, and now you've wrapped it, even though you couldn't actually pull off a wrap. So that is a very good use of Tanglefoot, and you have to keep your eye out for that, the Tanglefoot wrap. And that is definitely something people don't expect, the Tanglefoot wrap. They think, I didn't get wrapped, I'm bailing next turn. And the other thing, though, we already talked about this when we talked about heroic intervention trait. But let's say that they do manage to get an inch of you, but you reduce their movement, so now they're still within 3 inches of you. So let's say you were like this, and then they needed 4-inch movement to get out of the wrap, and so they managed to get that, but because of the Tanglefoot, they only managed to just get out of the wrap, and now you're still in heroic intervention trait in their turn. So as I say, that Tanglefoot with heroic in the opponent's turn can be a nice combo. And get you back on the objective, or take that unit out and then get you free movement. As we already said before, heroic intervention is basically almost 9 inches of free movement. So that can Tanglefoot in their movement phase to stop or reduce the fallback can set up a heroic intervention. So that is a nice use for Tanglefoot. Okay, so that's kind of movement phase shenanigans for Tanglefoot. So stop things from moving onto objectives, moving into zones to score secondaries, and then stopping things from getting into range for shooting or for charges, and then stopping fallbacks or reducing fallbacks in order to stay wrapped or to use heroic intervention traits. So those are kind of some good uses of Tanglefoot in the movement phase. All right, if people got questions, please post them down below, or let us know. Let us know in the chat some cool Tanglefoots you've done in past games. Love to know how people have been using their Tanglefoots and what awesome salty tears they've generated with it. Or the times that you forgot. I've forgotten to use it many times, often at the end of games, to stop a key fallback, or to stop a tank from getting too far away so my Terminators can catch up with them again. Like, it's so key that I've forgotten quite a few times. So let us know your Tanglefoot victories and Tanglefoot salties. Okay, charge phase. Okay, so the obvious use of Tanglefoot in the charge phase is to make a unit fail their charge. Especially salty if they thought they had an easy charge that you've now turned into a very difficult or impossible charge. And that's always very nice, because you have to declare at the beginning of their charge phase, so they know, they have that pre-knowledge. Okay, now I need a 12-inch charge. Shit. So if they still go for it, like, it's the best if you made it from a 7 to a 10 or something, and they still go for it because it's very important to them, and then you get to Overwatch into them, maybe on a 5-up, and they don't make it anyway. So it's like adding salt onto salts. It's awesome. But generally, you might, if you make a charge very difficult or undoable, then that unit they don't charge with it, and that unit just stays there, and that's to your advantage. Philip Daniel says he saved a shield captain from a squad of banshees. There you go. The other uses, though. So some people, remember, charging is not just to come and hit you. Charging can be used for lots of things. Charging can be used to get into combat, can be used to wrap you, can be used, that's less applicable to Custodes. Can't remember the last time somebody actually wanted to wrap me, but in general. And then charging can be used to bad touch tanks that you don't want to shoot. They can be used to get onto objectives. They can be used to get recon, King of the Hill, or other zoning type secondaries. The use of the move in the charge phase with a good player is very varied. It's not just to come and hit you a lot of the times. So you have to keep that in mind. So by tangle-footing them and stopping that charge or reducing that charge, you may have messed their complex, super cool plans up. Because maybe they weren't really just coming to hit you, they were coming to do something else. So, for example, a common one is, okay, let's say you're playing a meme list, you got some dudes and some land raiders. And land raiders, unfortunately, for whatever, almost 400 points, can still be bad touched. If you touch a land raider, that land raider's not shooting next turn. So, let's say your guard's here and your tank is here, and the unit in front of you needs a 9-inch charge to bad touch the tank and only a 6-inch charge to get into your guardians. Well, if you Tanglefoot them, now they still might make a 9 or 10-inch charge into guardians, but they won't have enough to the tank. They might have to rely on pile-ins, shenanigans, and consolidates to get to your tank. Okay, so using the Tanglefoot to stop a unit from bad touching something you don't want to bad touch can be good. Bikes are a perfect example. You can bad touch bikes because if they don't charge, they don't get the reroll wounds. So, and that makes them a lot less effective. So you don't want bikes to be bad touched, and you may not have the CP to do a stoop or something like that. Okay, so that's something too. If you don't want a knight to get into combat with multiple units, you can Tanglefoot it, and it might still get into one of your units, but it won't get into all of your units. So another thing to Tanglefoot is a knight. I love Tanglefooting knights, by the way. Most people don't realize you can Tanglefoot knights. So Tanglefooting a knight to stop anything to stop it from contacting multiple units as opposed to just one unit. Not just units you don't want to bad touch, but just units you don't want to get attacked. Or characters. So characters is another good one. You know, you're charging through gaps. You don't want it to get to your characters. A Tanglefoot will reduce the probability of getting to your characters. And then, God forbid, if people do want to actually wrap you, a good Tanglefoot could obviously stop people from getting enough movement in their charge and then subsequent pile-in and consolidates to wrap you. Finally, if you Tanglefoot a unit, especially say a unit that's spread between two like that, you might stop one whole side from attacking because they have to make a decision on which way they want that unit to go, or you significantly reduce the number of models that can get into their attacks on you by making sure all the stragglers, especially if it's a stringed out unit, don't get close enough to attack. So you can really reduce the number of attacks coming in too with a good Tanglefoot. So keep all those things in mind. I think if you're playing soup, a good Tanglefoot can save guardsmen. It can save your tank commanders from getting touched. Can save your basilisks from being touched. You know, there's a lot of things. Just a unit of foot custodians or a foot character can really contribute by Tanglefooting things as part of its screening kind of duties. And then finally, as I probably don't need to say, if you have some of our hover tanks nearby, the Caladius or the Palace, and those guys do get declared as targets, and then you Tanglefoot them, now you've reduced their charge by D6 plus 2, because they have -2 to charge. Obviously, they have to have been declared as a target of the charge to apply their -2 to charge. So that is almost always a sweet Tanglefoot. So that is that. Now, if somebody's close, so here's a situation that comes up a lot. Somebody's close. Somebody is 4 inches away, 3 inches away, 2 inches away, 1 inch away. The best I had, okay, I was playing, I can't remember who it was, I was playing somebody, and the knight, they're like, okay, I'm moving my knight so it's 1 inch away from you, it's going to be an auto charge. I'm like, okay. So, and, you know, my unit's like on the last legs. I'm like, okay, if this knight hits me, it's going to be game over. So I'm like, okay, so he moves the knight there, and he needs to charge so he can consolidate pile in and get movement onto objective so he doesn't shoot me. So I'm like, okay. So then he's like, okay, I'm charging these guys with my knight. It's a 1 inch charge. So in my mind, I'm thinking, like, he's still going to make it, right? 1 inch charge, right? He's still going to make it. So I'm like, okay. But I'm like, but I'm going to lose the game if this knight gets to me. I've got a CP left. It's turn 5, turn 6. Tanglefoot. Tanglefoot, I roll a 5. I'll take that. So now he's a 6-inch charge away. Getting a bit nervous. 6 is still pretty good. I would bank a game on a 6-inch charge. 7, maybe not. 8, definitely getting dicey. 9, hell no. So 6-inch charge, he's like, okay, well, he's got no other choice now. He's committed to it. His whole turn, he didn't shoot me on purpose. He needs this movement to get onto the objective. He does it anyway. Fails his charge. Okay, you still fail low charges. Hell, I have failed 3-inch charges many times. So if it's important to you, you don't be hesitant to use your Tanglefoot on even on a close charge. Because it could turn a 1-inch charge into a 7-inch charge. It can turn a 4-inch charge into a 10-inch charge. Okay? It can also turn a 3-inch charge into a 4-inch charge. But that person might then roll a 3. And they would have made it if it weren't for Tanglefoot. So you just never know. And so if it's important, then do it. Okay? And late in the game, when people have made all their plans around making this sure charge, that can just be game breaking for you. So back to my previous point, keep a CP around, be smart about it, and don't be afraid to use it. I don't think a good Tanglefoot is ever a waste of a CP, okay? And if you really need to, it's that important, you could spend another CP to reroll the Tanglefoot if you roll badly. But definitely, that is one story that comes into my mind about where it was like, it doesn't seem like it's going to do any good, but it ended up like saving that game. So, super important. Okay. So, I think those are all the things that I wanted to talk about Tanglefoot. I mean, it's just one stratagem, but you can see how it has so many implications. Maybe, it seems like it doesn't have that many uses, but it has a lot of targets, and the outcome of what you use it on has a lot of implications that has knock-on effects. Further down the turn, the phase, and maybe the game. When else have I used Tanglefoot? So I have pulled off a few Tanglefoot wraps, which always feels good. Especially because sometimes it can be hard to get wraps, especially with low model count units like 5 Alaris or 4 Bikers, stuff like that. I've used it many times to stop units from getting onto objectives and stuff like that. And I really like the combo of reducing the fallback and then heroically intervening. I haven't pulled that off, but there's certainly something that's always in my mind. To be honest, though, the times I am as subject to, I have made as many of those errors as I've just preached you not to make, forgetting to use it in the movement phase, forgetting to use it in fallback, and forgetting to use it in those kind of circumstances, mostly just using it to disrupt charges. So it can be super good. As I say, you got to keep it at the top level of your consciousness during your opponent's turn when sometimes your brain tends to switch off. So that is about it. A quick jaunt through the coolness that is Tanglefoot Grenades. So everybody, just let me know if you have questions or thoughts, cool Tanglefoot stories, and we'll try and answer them up. Or if you have any other questions, let me know. If you have suggestions about topics you'd like us to cover, then let me know as well. People noticed on the ticker tape there that one of the things is hashtag night fails. I love Tanglefooting knights. There was one time I missed, was this tank commander fell back and it only had movement 4, and if I Tanglefooted it, I could have kept it locked in combat and that would have saved my unit. So there's another kind of failed opportunity to use a Tanglefoot. So it's very clutch. So next week will be the next topic that people voted for, which is bikes revisited. And so next week we will, and I think it'll be on a Wednesday, but don't hold me to that right now. We will be talking about bikes and how they might be useful again. Loadouts, the old school bike spam list, and potential improvements we might see for bikes in Psychic Awakening. So stay tuned next week for Bikes Revisited. Bruce Gordon, quick question. If I'm running a foot list to save points, can I leave Trajan out? Running a foot list doesn't necessarily save you points. I mean, you save points by saving points. Can you leave Trajan out? Well, Trajan is very good, but he's by no means mandatory. But for 20 points more than a shield captain, he does give you a little bit extra. He's basically D3 extra CP, which is very key. Reroll ones to wound, which is very nice on an army which almost exclusively always wounds on 3s or 2s. And he's quite a strong combat character, being one of only 2 things in your army that's strength 10. He's very hard to kill and a little bit of a distraction at times. And as we've said, if you're playing mostly vehicles and stuff, he can be your source of Tanglefoot. So I think you'd have to have good reason for leaving Trajan out. 20 points you can often scavenge elsewhere from taking Misericordias and stuff like that off. So you have to have a good reason to leave Trajan out. I'll put it like that. But if you do, then go for it. Leave him home. Sean Stryker is happy we're talking about bikes next week. Actually, I'm looking forward to talking about bikes because in the old days, the first thing I built was 18 bikes, bike captains, and I used to play bike spam. 18 bikes. It was like 7, 7, and 5, or like 18 or 19 bikes, shield captains, and a guard battalion. That's what I used to play for the longest time. At tournaments, team tournaments, that's what I used to play. ETC, ITC, that's what I used to play, and it was fun. But we'll talk about it next week, but bikes kind of just fell out, and we're starting to see bikes come back a little bit in some lists. I played with them for quite a long time in my 4CP hybrid list, and certainly I like bikes. So we'll talk about the bike list, what's good about them, what's bad about them, how maybe best to play them, and then predictions for Psychic Awakening if they might get a little bit of help for 90 points. So that will be next week. Okay, any other questions, guys? The other thing I want to say is, so in the next few weeks probably, I'm not going to do this now because right now shipping things to people is ridiculous, hard, and takes a long time. So we're going to wait. But once COVID restrictions come down, I've got the following things to give away. I've got a copy of Chapter approved, if you want that. I've got Salamander's book. I've got Imperial Fist book. I've got the Ritual of the Damned. I've got the Sisters Codex. So I've got all these things to give away. And so if people didn't know, Capital City Bloodbath has been canceled. We had already received our generous amount of prize support for the painting competition from the Army Painter, Adam Abramovitz and the guys at the Army Painter. They always sponsor our painting competitions, and we really appreciate that. But they sent me that stuff months ago, and unfortunately we had to cancel CCBB now. So I was happy to send it back to them, but they don't want it back. They would like us to give it away to people, to our supporters and our followers. So we're going to come up with a good and worthy contest for you to win all this Army Painter stuff. And we're talking complete paint sets. We're talking brush sets. We're talking all sorts of cool stuff that they usually give to us for our tournaments. I'm just going to be giving that stuff away for contests. So once I come up with a good contest, stay tuned. Watch our Facebook page. We'll be posting it up on there. I'm going to mention it when we go online. But big kudos out to the guys at the Army Painter. They've already been helping a lot of people during this hard time. And so thanks to them for just random stuff that I'm just going to be able to give away. So I might do a painting contest. Yeah, it's the thing. It's hard to judge painting. Like, if you send me like a crappy picture, somebody with a good picture looks better than somebody with a crappy picture. I don't know. So I have to think about it. But we will be giving away a bunch of free Army Painter stuff, courtesy of Adam. Okay. See, Farsight, did we already cover Forge World Troops? Sorry, do you mean as a Tactica episode on like Sagittarium? Could do an episode on Sagittarium. I'm not sure I could fill a whole episode talking about Sagittarium, but I could certainly think about it. We could talk about troop choices. That might be something that I've already done when we talked way back at the beginning of Tactica, and might be something I have to revisit once the Psychic Awakening comes out. So I might save it for that, but I'll write it down. Sags. Saggy balls. Okay. Okay. What else do I have to tell you guys? That's about it. So, hope you guys enjoyed that. Please give me feedback on the chat or message me. Join the Discord. The Discord link is right there. And join the Discord and let us know what you think. And spread the good word. And we'll see you guys back by the fire, huddling for our book. Good night.